want you to know.
While Shakespeare warned us to beware the Ides of March, nothing prepared me for what we got on this March 15th from the refs across a multitude of games. Fans across the country were up in arms over calls and non-calls, screaming at the top of their lungs,
It's not fair to deny me.
So let's get into it and see if these calls were fair or not before we get to the clown show we saw at the end of the game in Minnesota. We got a flagrant 1 foul called on this contest of the DeMar DeRozan shot that goes in to tie the game. Remember, after this Zaza play on Kawhi, the NBA instituted new rules to protect the shooter. While Barnes didn't intentionally put his foot underneath DeRozan as he lands, it doesn't matter. He needs to contest in the air with more awareness. DeRozan's feet also flow in a very natural sway forward, and they stay parallel, not getting wider than his frame. This was an easy call with the review, and it also gave us the very rare glimpse of the 2-for-1 free throw, since a maximum of 4 points may be scored on one possession when a three-pointer is made. Over in Cleveland, they made the same type of foul call for James Harden, and you might ask why this was reviewed and deemed a common foul and not a flagrant. The big difference is that Harden lets his feet parachute outwards a little bit in order to land on the defender's foot. Plus, this is James Harden, the guy who caused a lot of havoc for several years with his unique way of drawing fouls. Back to the Bulls-Kings game, down by 4 and desperate for a miracle, DeRozan gets one. Absolutely love the backscreen into handoff that forces a switch. De'Aaron Fox gets caught way out of position, forcing Barnes to step up, and just as the ball is swishing clean through the net, the ref's hand lifts, the whistle blows, and the only two people in the gym who know what happened are DeRozan and the ref. Only on this angle can we clearly see contact on the shooting elbow before the release. If you don't think this is worthy of a call, all I can say is have someone touch you on the elbow while shooting a deep three and find out. We had a lot of people triggered by this play deep in the fourth of Sixers Cavs when Embiid appears to knock Evan Mobley back to the Stone Age as he rises up to nail this mid-range jumper. This was tough, and it seems foolish of Doc to challenge it. I've gone back and forth on this one a lot of times. There's a slight head tilt back just before the contact, indicating maybe a flop on Mobley's part. The armbar by Embiid lifts up, but well after the initial contact with his shoulder, and the entire forearm stays in contact, meaning it's not extended out to gain an advantage. So the refs deemed this not enough to merit the charge call, and they counted the hoop, got rid of the offensive charge, and I can see their point. But I'm also sympathetic to the Cavs fans. And that brings us to the main event in Minnesota, where there was plenty to go over. And if you're as passionate as these guys are over the weird calls in this game, then you've got to check out So Rare, a sports fantasy game and marketplace featuring officially licensed digital player cards from the NBA. You can build teams by buying, selling, collecting, and trading these cards and compete with them in tournaments that can help you win rewards like tickets to games, cards of higher scarcity, autographed jerseys, NBA store gift cards, and more. I've set up a private league where you can compete against me and the rest of the B-Ball Breakdown community. Some tournaments have prizes, while you can always play with the common cards you get just for signing up. Use my link and you'll get 20 free common cards to get you started. Just like this game started out real chippy between the Celtics and the Timberwolves. Tensions were high, the game was very physical, and everyone was on the refs. By this point in the game, it was understandable the refs felt the need to get control of it with all the talking and complaining going on. So when Rudy dunks and does the parallel bars dismount and flex, the trail official from across the court gave him a technical foul. If you look closely, his feet do make contact with White, and there is a rule against taunting in the rulebook. This might not have been called in a different context, but because of the nature of the game till this point, I can follow what the ref was trying to do. On the next play, the Celtics run a gorgeous horn set, and then Rudy is late getting over to protect the rim. The fall was a bit gruesome with the spin and then the landing on the hip. This was a no-brainer to review the play, and an easy flagrant 1 call as there is clear contact to Tatum's face. It's a big factor in flagrant 1 calls, but Tatum only gets 1 free throw since the rules state you can only score a maximum of 3 points on a possession when a 2-point field goal is made. And that brings us to the SHIT show we got at the very end of this game. I had to bring Ronnie Nunn in on this one, who was an NBA ref for 19 years, head of officials for 5 years, and director of development for 3 more. Well, Ronnie, thank you so much for being here. We need your help. It's a lot of stuff we got to go through. So let's just jump right into it, shall we? I'm not even sure. I think the first thing we need to look at is as they were going into a scrum near the baseline on the far side, away from the benches, we have Celtics coach Joe Mazzulla coming out way onto the court to call a timeout before the jump ball occurs. Do you think that this should have been a technical foul?
Well, there's no question it has to be a technical foul. The deal here is once we allowed coaches to be able to call timeout and give them this opportunity, they think they can go anywhere. And it's almost natural that they're running to say, since I can call a timeout, I got to go somewhere so you can see me. And the problem is you can't go anywhere to be seen. Either your players can call it for you when they notice that you want it, and you can only go to the midcourt line, just like you call a play out. You can call a midcourt line, and then you go back to your bench, and you can go up to the midcourt line and yell out for timeout. But you can't go where you think that you need to go to get the referees to see you. That's as clear and unchallenged as it can be. That's the only thing that one can do for fairness in the game. You cannot do that.
And in fairness to the referees, this is one of those rare instances where all the action was going on as far away as possible from that bench. So they're not looking at all in that direction, right? And they just simply, they explained at the end of the game, they just didn't see it. Now, that said, when they did see it, it was clear he didn't just materialize there. He had probably had to walk across and get on the floor at that point. And that is problematic. The other thing that's interesting as part of the rule is you can't call a timeout if your team doesn't have possession of the ball. And you can see when he starts to try and call a timeout, it's already unclear who has possession as they're fighting for that ball. He never would have gotten that call to begin with.
Yeah, I think there's two things going on. One is, there's three players on one, and there's only one referee in this cocoon over there. And I'm looking for two things if it were me. I'm looking for, because of the time of the game, the amount of time left in the game, I'm looking for maybe a take foul. I'm looking for something that shows me there's a foul to stop the clock and somebody wants a foul as they rush for this ball. But whatever it was, it apparently was marginal to the official, and he couldn't stop the clock until he came up with a call, which was a jump ball.
After recording this, the league's last 2-minute report came out confirming what Ronnie was talking about. Both McDaniels and Gobert committed fouls that were not called as Williams struggled to maintain control of the ball. And he's certainly fortunate they didn't call a technical foul, which they should have, which would have really impacted this game. And the last 2-minute report also reveals that Gobert was out of bounds while in contact with the ball, so this should have been Celtics ball out of bounds. We have a jump ball now, and Ronnie, the jump ball goes back to the beginning of the game, which is kind of fun because we don't always see this. We don't have it in college anymore. We don't have it in high school. Was there a problem with the way Grant Williams executed his tip of the ball after the toss?
Every once in a while, it's good to show Wilt Chamberlain, Bill Russell go for a jump ball. They go for it just like a rebound. They go to see who can jump higher to get to the tap. But today they steal the tap. The actual methodology of it is to throw a ball high enough that the players jump as the ball actually is beginning to come down. So we've gone from coming down, that's out, getting to its apex, which would be great, that's out. And now we're getting it 75% up and we're going for it. So first of all, there's a stolen tap, and that needs to be called. Because we have not addressed this, it has bit us now right in a critical time in the game because people know we won't call it. And that's the problem. There are some rules you just have to call. And, maybe a blanket statement's got to come out by the commissioner and say, we have the worst marketing of a tossed ball for the start of a game in NBA or basketball history. People steal balls and we don't do anything about it. Maybe that ought to cost a point if you steal a ball on a jump inappropriately, or certainly as openly, overtly that you do it. And now, look, it happens at a critical time. And guess what we do at the start of the game? Nothing. And guess what we do at a critical time of the game? Nothing, which cost the team an opportunity that deserved the ball not to get it.
Absolutely, because there was lots of time left, 3.1 seconds. They had a timeout they could have called to advance it to half court, and the Timberwolves certainly could have gotten some version of a shot to either tie it or win it at the three-pointer at the buzzer. So very, very unfortunate that those things happened, and hopefully we can figure out a way, like you said, to get back to a jump ball where, it's mano a mano. We want to see who can get higher or not. Regarding Al Horford suddenly moving spots, the rules do not specify that players must be set and not moving, but he cannot be behind his opponent when the ref tosses the ball. He pretty much gets back to the side of McDaniels before the ball is tossed, and the last 2-minute report says he got back into position, but it's close to being a violation with possession going to Minnesota. Well, Ronnie, thanks so much for coming on here and breaking this stuff down. Terrific stuff. Really is going to help us all just kind of get a handle on what's going on in the court and tamp down some of the blowback. It's kind of bad right now. Certainly recently we had Fred VanVleet, and I did a video on that. We have this. Monty Williams also lit up the refs the other night. And I've gone through that game. I might even have another video on that coming up because it's worth looking at. So we got to do something, because I know that there's people frustrated, but there needs to be some version of understanding that, the refs are A, human, and B, they're not a fan of your team. They're simply going to call the game the way they see it. And it might happen that you're going to get a call that you don't like that is actually a legitimate call.
Yeah, it takes away from the sportsmanship of the game. I once reffed a game, and a player came to me, Tony Campbell, and said, Ronnie, there's something brewing out here. Get ready. And I was oblivious to this brewing. And I think what's happened is when I reffed my games, I'd always recognize what's going on in society. I hate to kind of breach this, but I'm trying to say that people think now that anything is good to go. Anything said is okay to be said. Any anger that wants to be directed to people in a way that's normally not done is all good to go. So now you've got all these young people who are part of this societal life, and all of a sudden there's no respect for authority figures. There's no respect for people that have the toughest game, although people don't believe. Of the three principal people on the court, player team A, team B, and team C, the guy that has the toughest job are the three guys doing team C. That's the toughest game to referee in the world. And they do a great job. And yes, we make mistakes, but it seems like it's even when the mistake is their own, they blame an official. And I don't like that.
Absolutely. We need to get back to having some sort of notion of, gentlemen out there. They used to raise their hand on a call. In fact, Fred VanVleet still does that, but then lost his cool and really didn't do himself any favors. So I agree. And the other fear here, I think, is that the way referees are being treated at the lower levels, where they're getting paid almost nothing to have to endure parents and young players,
Yes.
Being inappropriate to them. What's going to happen is we won't have refs. We will not have enough refs to cover games at the lower levels, and those games will have to either be, I guess, canceled. I'm hearing some stories here, horror stories of how they're covering high school games to have enough refs, because they, guys are going to work 3-4 games a night just to help figure out how to get enough people who know what they're doing to cover these games. It's a problem, and I feel like you're right. There's a societal problem as well that this is brewing. And if we don't do enough work to try and convince people to stop doing it, it's only going to get worse.
Well said, my friend. Well said.
Well, thanks, have and I'm sure we'll have to get on again and discuss more of the stuff. Keep everyone focused on what's important about the game, and thanks so much. And don't forget, sports fans, at BBALL Breakdown, we're not a channel, we're a conversation. You in? Are you in, Ronnie?
I am in, Coach Nick, and it's always a pleasure.